It was one hot day during the summer break at the university where my daughter Susan attends. At Susan's request, I headed towards the storage shed, only to be shoved inside by Susan.
"I can't let a shabby mom meet Nancy. Don't come out of there."
Before I could react, the door closed, and it seemed to be barred from the outside, making it impossible to get out. The weather forecast indicated that the outside temperature would easily exceed 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and inside the airtight storage shed without any air conditioning, it was probably approaching a sweltering 104 degrees Fahrenheit. I felt a clear danger to my life, but no matter what I did, the door wouldn't budge, and all my efforts were in vain. Sweat poured out from my entire body, heat accumulated, I became dizzy, eventually developed a headache, and gradually lost consciousness. I'm Linda, a 40-year-old housewife who met my husband Richard when I was 25, working at a dress shop. Richard was divorced and had brought along his then 4-year-old daughter, Susan, from his previous marriage. We didn't mind this arrangement. Since we couldn't have children of our own, we cherished Susan as our own daughter and raised her with love. My relationship with Susan soon became good, and we built a harmonious family, irrespective of blood ties. Time flew by, and Susan reached the age to consider going to college. She consulted us about her future plans, and since we had diligently saved up for her education, we sent her off to college. Apparently enjoying her campus life, Susan started working part-time at a pub around that time. That in itself was fine, but gradually her clothing and makeup became flashy, and she began to exhibit a rebellious attitude towards me. Susan hadn't gone through much of a rebellious phase, so Richard and I assumed it was just coming late, but Susan's rebellion only increased proportionally. For instance, although I didn't meddle with Susan's grades, her lifestyle became quite erratic, and one day I gently suggested, "Susan, how about trying to wake up a bit earlier?"
"Shut up! Stop interfering with every little thing."
Her anger was excessive, and as a mother simply offering a friendly suggestion, I felt it was quite unreasonable. However, I reconsidered, thinking it might just be a sensitive phase she was going through. But Susan's rebellious attitude extended to Richard as well. One day, they had this exchange. "Is your part-time job fun?"
"Huh? There's no such thing as an easy job. Are you mocking me? Keep your jokes to your face only."
It's understandable to think there must be some reason if she treated her biological father this way, let alone me, who wasn't related by blood. So, one day, we decided to have a discussion as a family.
"What's this about, getting all formal?"
"Susan, you've been quite agitated lately. Is something bothering you? If you can talk about it, we're here to listen. Being angry all the time is bad for your health. If there's something you need to get off your chest, talk to us."
"Shut up! It doesn't matter. I have nothing to say."
She completely dismissed us, leaving both Richard and me baffled. We could only hope that time would eventually resolve things. One summer day, Susan, now on her summer break from college, seemed to be diligently working at her part-time job, enjoying the freedom of earning and spending her own money. It was evident from her usual expression that she found joy in working and earning her own money. During that summer break, Susan told me she was bringing a friend over.
"Nancy's parents own a company. She's so composed, and even though her family is wealthy, she's not snobby at all. I really admire that."
Susan's face lit up as she talked about her friend. It was clear that having such a friend was a good thing, and naturally, I wanted to do my best to welcome her.
"Mom, make sure to clean thoroughly, okay? And hide anything that looks shabby."
Even though there might have been some vanity, I understood her intention to not feel inferior to someone from a well-off background. So, I cleaned meticulously and made sure the room looked as presentable as possible. More than that, I was genuinely happy to see Susan looking so delighted, something I hadn't seen in a long time, and I, too, was looking forward to her friend's visit.
Hey, Mom, this desk looks kind of shabby. Didn't we have a nicer one stored in the shed? Can we go check together?
Respecting Susan's opinion, we headed to the storage shed together. As I rummaged through the shed as directed, Susan suddenly shoved me further inside and said,
"I can't let a shabby mom meet Nancy. Don't come out of here."
Before I could react, the door was shut, and it seemed to be barred from the outside, making it impossible to open from the inside. It was the height of summer, and being in the enclosed space of the storage shed without any air conditioning, the relentless heat made me feel like my life was in danger. The outside temperature must have easily exceeded 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I felt it must be over 104 degrees Fahrenheit inside. Not only did sweat pour out, but I also felt my strength being sapped away, and as dizziness began to set in, I lost consciousness. I had no idea how much time had passed, but when I came to, I felt a severe headache and heard a faint noise outside the door. Was someone there? Desperately seeking any help, I pounded on the door from the inside and shouted,
"Help! Help!"
It seemed my plea was heard, as there was a noise, and the door opened.
"Oh? Are you?"
I didn't understand why the girl, whom I didn't know, said that, but a wave of relief washed over me, and I lost consciousness again. The next time I awoke, I was in a hospital bed, with the girl who had saved me sitting politely by my side. "Linda, are you all right?"
"Huh? How did I get here?"
I had no memory of the time I was unconscious, and the girl explained.
"I called an ambulance. They said it was a mild case of heat stroke. Fortunately, you'll be fine with some rest, according to the doctor."
I could only feel grateful for her quick response, which saved me before things got worse. "Are you Nancy, Susan's friend?"
"Yes, that's right. This isn't the first time we've met. Have you forgotten? Though, I guess it's understandable." "What? What do you mean?"
It was strange because she spoke as if she knew me, but Nancy just shook her head.
"Oh, no, it's nothing. When I came to your house, Susan left saying she wanted to introduce me to someone."
What was Susan thinking, inviting a friend over and then leaving? Though I wondered about it, I listened to what Nancy said next.
"While I was waiting, I needed to use the restroom. When I came out, I noticed the shed had an unusual barricade, which I found odd."
Nancy's keen observation and quick thinking demonstrated not just her good upbringing but also her intelligence.
"Even though the heat stroke was mild, you were indeed taken by ambulance. Shouldn't you call your husband?"
Oh, right. I felt foolish for not thinking of it myself, so I called Richard from the hospital. After a while, Richard rushed into the hospital room, looking frantic.
"Linda, are you okay?"
Fortunately, it wasn't serious. Thanks to Nancy's quick response. I'm glad to hear that. With Richard relieved, Nancy and I explained the events that led to this.
What was Susan thinking? Locking up her mom just to meet someone? No matter what, her actions are inexcusable. It's time to be strict with her.
Richard then took out his phone and called Susan.
"Hey, Susan. Are you at home? We need to talk. Don't go anywhere, got it?"
It was clear Richard was angry, and I suspected Susan couldn't ignore her dad's orders.
May I come along too? I don't mean to interfere in your family matters, but I left my belongings at your house."
Nancy's polite request made me feel it might be okay for her to know about our family issues, though I couldn't explain why. When the three of us returned home, Susan greeted us with a sullen expression.
"What is it, Dad? What's this about?" "That's quite a tone, Susan. Do you realize what you've done? This could be considered a crime." "Humph, she's not my mom. She's just a nasty woman."
The open contempt in her eyes was one thing, but calling me a nasty woman was too much, and it was so sudden.
"That's something I can't ignore, Susan. True, she's not your biological mother, but why would you say such things to a mom who's raised you all this time?"
"I know the truth. Dad, you're being deceived by this woman. She stole you away from my real mom and forced me apart from her. And she's hogging all your earnings." Her accusations were beyond belief and obviously false, but it was clear from Susan's eyes that she genuinely believed them.
"I have no idea where you're getting this from, but who told you such things?"
"My real mom did. It started with a regular at my part-time job. At first, I wasn't sure, but after repeatedly hearing it, I finally met my real mom." By real mom, she meant her biological mother, not me. Susan continued to rant. "My real mom gave me lots of presents. We exchanged contact information and talked a lot. She said if we lived together, I could have a better life. I hate this current life where I'm constantly nagged." The word bribery flashed through my mind, but I couldn't figure out why. "My real mom expanded my world. I didn't want to introduce Nancy to a dirty, deceitful woman like you. That's why I locked you up." As Susan shouted, Nancy seemed to be pondering something. For a moment before she spoke. "Excuse me, Susan? Linda is by no means the vile person you describe," Nancy interjected gently. "And what do you know about Nancy?" Susan retorted, still agitated. Nancy, though speaking softly, calmly reproved her friend. "Please calm down, Susan. Linda and I have a past connection." That was an unexpected revelation. Given that I couldn't think of any such connection, I was initially confused. But Nancy gazed at me with a very kind and nostalgic expression. "Linda, have you forgotten that you worked in a dress shop before you got married?" "What? There's no way I could forget that, but..." "Since it's an old story, it's understandable if your memory is a bit hazy. However, my family regularly commissioned work from your shop, and we were on friendly terms." It was clear that Nancy was not lying. She wouldn't do such a thing, but it took me a moment to grasp this fact. "Besides your excellent tailoring skills, my parents were very fond of your kindness. When I was a child, you treated me as if I were your own daughter." Rather than being surprised by this unexpected fact, I felt sorry for having forgotten such a beautiful memory. "It's a bit embarrassing, or rather, it's now a charming story, but according to my parents, when you came to inform us that you were leaving the shop, I cried my eyes out of loneliness." Finally, I remembered Nancy, or rather, I was ashamed that I had completely forgotten the beloved daughter of our valued regular customers who had been so kind to me. "Yes, now that you mention it. I'm sorry, Nancy. I had completely forgotten." "No, please don't worry about it. If I hadn't seen the distinctive mole under your right lip, I might not have recognized you either. But thanks to that, many memories came back." Nancy, smiling sweetly like a blooming flower, continued with that same charming expression. "After you got married, you frequently updated my family about your home life. My parents told me how happily you spoke about Susan, and, I'm embarrassed to admit, I was jealous." "Hey! What's with you two getting all chummy?" Given the situation, I thought it inappropriate to delve into nostalgic stories, but Nancy looked directly at Susan and said,
"Don't you understand, Susan? I've known Linda for a long time, so my judgment isn't baseless. I can confidently say that Linda is not the vile woman you describe."
Though Nancy's tone was calm, it carried overwhelming conviction. Hearing such facts from a friend, even Susan had to fall silent. "Well, I kept quiet because it might be seen as a disgrace, but the one who had the affair wasn't Linda. It was the other way around. Emily, your biological mom, betrayed me," Richard said, speaking for the first time, sounding somewhat weary. I was taken aback. "Moreover, as far as I know, the current Emily doesn't seem wealthy enough to pamper Susan. After all, she's notoriously wasteful." Though it might have been unnecessary information, Richard's revelation was new to me, so I was quite surprised, and Susan seemed to be as well.
What? What is this? So who am I supposed to believe? My real mom is the villain? How are my current mom and Nancy acquainted? What's going on? Where's the proof?
While I understood Susan's feelings of being distraught upon learning the truth, I was at a loss when asked to prove Nancy's connection. Just then, Richard spoke up.
After hearing Nancy's story, I too remembered her. I have proof. Wait a moment.
Richard stood up slowly, opened the upper storage in the room, and took out an old album.
Ah, here it is. Look.
We all gathered around the album and saw a photo of my younger self, before I retired from the dress shop, with Richard, Nancy, and her parents.
Oh, how nostalgic. Thank you, Richard, for preserving these photos so carefully.
Nancy's polite gratitude further confirmed her impeccable upbringing. Even though I knew it was impossible, I couldn't help but feel a bit envious. Seeing the photo, Susan realized it was undeniable proof and remained silent with a serious expression. But I still don't understand Emily's motive. Why did she feed Susan all these lies? Perhaps we should bring her here. Susan, give me Emily's contact information. Richard then obtained the contact details from Susan and called his former wife, Emily.
Nancy, do you have time? Apparently, Emily insists on meeting Susan's friends, he said. I don't mind, but is it appropriate for someone like me, an outsider, to be part of a discussion about Susan's family matters?
Nancy looked apologetic, but as it was a request, she agreed to stay. After a while, Emily arrived. Upon seeing her, with her gaudy, foolish, vulgar, and malicious demeanor, I felt a strong sense of discomfort. Nancy's expression also tightened.
Why did I have to come all the way here?
Emily said, spreading the stench of her strong perfume and looking visibly annoyed. Seeing her, I genuinely wondered why Susan believed this woman so readily.
You haven't changed at all, Emily. So, what was your plan in deceiving Susan? Richard asked. Such harsh words. I just needed some money and thought I could use Susan. She seems to have quite the glamorous social circle.
Emily replied without the slightest hint of remorse. There was nothing admirable about Emily's shamelessness, and Richard naturally found her ominous manner suspicious.
Using her glamorous social circle? What do you mean by that? Richard questioned.
Isn't it obvious?
I plan to fill Susan's head with lies, manipulate her rich friends, and get some money out of them.
Emily's tone made it sound as though she believed this fraudulent scheme was entirely justified. See? It's reasonable, right? I mean, those who have should help those who don't, right? It was baffling how she could be so brazen. Seeing her complete lack of guilt, I could only smirk at the absurdity.
Wah!
Nancy, her face turning red, was speechless. It was understandable. To say that just because someone is wealthy, they should unconditionally help a stranger with their self-inflicted problems was infuriating.
Our friendship has been mocked.
Calm down, Nancy, I said, trying to soothe her. It was evident that Nancy was using all her willpower to keep her anger in check. Her shoulders trembling slightly.
How did you know about Susan's university and her friends there?
Richard pressed. Oh, that was easy.
There was a regular at the pub where I work who's a detective.
I had him look into it. Hey, rich girl, won't you spare some money for a poor citizen? Even if it was a rule that the wealthy should share with the poor, her haughty tone was obnoxious and incredibly presumptuous, far from how one should request help.
I'm afraid I don't see any need to entertain such nonsense, Nancy retorted.
Stingy. You've got money, don't you?
Be generous.
Emily pouted, looking like a petulant child. It was ridiculous to think that such a request would work.
I've got this guy at the bar I want to spend on, but I have no money. Even the gifts I gave to Susan were all bought with borrowed money. Honestly, it's tough to make ends meet, and I really don't feel like working either, Emily continued.
Seeing Emily reveal her true nature, Susan was shocked and asked,
And Mom? You said I could live in luxury if we were together?
Huh? Stupid.
Of course that was a lie. Do you think I borrowed extra money just to keep you happy?
You should be grateful. Or are you going to repay my debts for me? Emily retorted.
You! Susan gritted her teeth in frustration.
It was far from the words a mother should say to her own daughter. I admired Susan for not resorting to violence despite her anger.
What a splendid display of villainy. It's almost refreshing. So, do you really think you can get help with such nonsense and despicable behavior?
Richard said, his voice brimming with barely contained anger. Emily remained unfazed. Oh, come on, don't be so stingy. We were married once, weren't we?
You betrayed me, and now you speak like that. Forgiveness is hard to come by.
Richard's eyes bore into Emily with an intensity that could silence anyone.
Why, yikes!
Even I, who had no direct involvement, felt fear, so it was no surprise that Emily shrank under Richard's gaze, gulping and falling silent.
Let me make this clear, Emily. Never approach Susan, or any of us, again. Why, yes, I understand.
Emily nodded repeatedly, drenched in cold sweat, resembling a wind-up toy. It was a complicated feeling, seeing her like that, though I didn't want to sympathize. After this, Susan stopped her rebellious behavior. Her makeup became more subdued, and she returned to her former, more genuine self.
Mom, you're doing the dishes, right? Should I vacuum?
Oh, would you? That would be wonderful.
Leave it to me.
Susan began to help with household chores voluntarily. Even though we weren't desperately short of help, her willingness was genuinely appreciated. Just when we thought peace had returned to our home, Emily reappeared, still clinging to her past ways. Hey, I've turned over a new leaf. Won't you let Susan live with me? Her claim of having reformed was laughable, and her nerve in making such a request was incomprehensible. What would she even do with Susan, given her complete lack of life skills? It was obvious she was up to no good. Oh, fine. If you're that insistent, Susan said.
What, Susan? I was taken aback. That's my girl. I knew you'd understand.
Emily beamed as Susan walked towards the back of the house. Initially, I didn't understand her actions, but when a police car pulled up in front of our house, it all became clear.
What? Why? What's happening?
Emily screamed as she was taken away by the police, utterly oblivious to the consequences of her actions. In a twisted way, her ignorance seemed like bliss. With Emily out of the picture, peace returned to our lives. One day, I received a call from Nancy, who said her parents wanted to meet me after a long time and suggested a dinner gathering. There was no reason to refuse, and during our pleasant reunion, Nancy's parents proposed that I return to work at the dress shop. With Susan no longer needing my constant attention, and feeling thrilled that my skills were still valued, I accepted their offer and resumed my job at the shop where I used to work. Nancy's family continued to treat me with kindness, making my workdays fulfilling and happy. Susan and Nancy's friendship blossomed healthily, and soon, our families started interacting more closely. From then on, I lived peaceful and happy days, free from any worries.